friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk about making the most of leftovers. Now, this is not a new topic, but I wanted to rehash this one again because it's been quite a while since I've talked about it. And also your food storage. So these two things combined together that can really save you money and just make the most out of all your meals and to keep your meals from being boring. So a lot of things I'm going to be mentioning, I have videos on, and so what I'll do is I'll link to the playlist that includes most, if not all, of these different videos. But I just want to remind people that learning how to make the most of your leftovers, not only does it save money, it can also make things a lot easier. And by the way, if you're a vegan, just so you know, this is all going to be mostly surrounded around meats. So this video is probably not for you. But usually what I'll do is I'll bake up some kind of meat. So it might be a whole turkey, a chicken, a big roast of some kind, or even one or two big steelhead or salmon fillets, or any other kind of fish for that matter, or maybe it's grilled chicken breasts or steaks. So instead of just making a couple of steaks for a single dinner, I might cook up a whole bunch of steaks and then use the leftovers. That way the steaks are already ready to go for another meal that I want to make with those steaks. For example, one of my favorite things to do that I haven't done in a while is to make steak fajitas. So one night I might make steak and potatoes with some kind of side vegetable, but then cook up a whole bunch of those, barbecue up a bunch, then take the leftovers and cut them up and put them in a steak fajita with some peppers, onions, garlic, and my own homemade tortillas. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the bigger things and then just read off a list of examples of the kind of meals I will make from these various meats, such as a red meat roast. So that could be elk, it could be venison, or it could be beef. So cook up a roast, sometimes even two. Lately I've been doing two at a time so that then I can take whatever I don't want to use immediately for other meals. I might freeze the rest of that cooked meat so that I could pull it out and dehydrate it. I have a video on that I'll link to down below if you're wanting to know the best way to dehydrate meats to have them turn out light and crispy and easy to reuse, and very, very similar to freeze-dried meats for those who cannot afford a freeze dryer or just don't want one. So, and in fact, there's an example right here of some corned beef I've done that with. So then what I would do with the leftover meat that I want to use right away is I might make a pot pie, enchiladas, barbecue beef, elk, or venison that I would serve either over rice or over bread, like a toast. If I have leftover beans from making beans and cornbread one night, then I might take the two, combine them together, and make beef and bean and cheese burritos. Mongolian beef is another one. I have an old video on that. I haven't made that in a long time, and I forgot all about that. But that is another great option to use your leftover roast for. And then also cold cannon. Cold cannon is not traditionally made with meat. It's usually a very cheap meal. It's an Irish meal made with mashed potatoes and either kale or cabbage and onions, garlic, and whatever, salt, pepper. It's very simple. I actually have a video I did. My most recent one is where I was using my dehydrated mashed potatoes. So I made up a bunch of mashed potatoes from my homegrown potatoes, then dried them out, powdered it up, and then I used that to make some cold cannon using some homemade broth. But one of the things that I would add to that the next time I do it, next time I make it, I'm going to use all dried goods, including dried corned beef. Corned beef is excellent in cold cannon, or any other kind of roast. That includes a beef roast, venison roast, elk roast. Just throwing a little bit of meat in there. You don't need very much. It just adds a little more flavor and obviously more protein to it. And I love it. I love it with one of those in there. And then of course, there's always soup. So anything that's left over can be tossed in a soup or a stew. And that will go for any of the meats, by the way. But the great thing about that is that when you go to make your soup, so no matter what it is, like if you're with the chicken or turkey, you're making a bone broth, or if you happen to have any bones from the red meats, make a bone broth. Then you can add any of the dried goods you've put up in storage. That's the way I've been doing it for many years, is I make the bone broth and then I take whatever I've got dehydrated up, like cabbage, zucchini. Some of the stuff is from my garden, some is not. carrots, bell peppers, snow peas. I don't usually use those in soup unless it's going to be more of an Asian tasting soup. Green beans and mushrooms and much more. And just throw all that in there, onions, garlic, and so on. And then let it cook, and yeah, you've got a nice bone broth soup. And whatever, and you can throw in, if you didn't have any meat left on your bones when you went to make that bone broth, then throw any of your dehydrated meats in there as well. And then before I go on to the other ones, let me mention this real quick so I don't forget it. And this is homemade meatballs that I then canned. And so this is food storage, but then how I use leftovers with the meatballs is if I've been making a lot of biscuits and gravy. Every time I make biscuits and gravy, I take the excess gravy that's left over after breakfast, put it in a bowl, in a glass bowl, and freeze it. And then once that bowl is full and I'm ready to do it, I'll pull that out, let it thaw, and then add, these are already cooked, the gravy's already cooked. All I have to do is mix the two things together and let them heat through, and then I can serve it over some white rice. It's one of our favorite meals. So meatballs and gravy over rice. And so that's one way you can use up leftover gravies of any kind, really. So salmon or steelhead. So steelhead is very similar to salmon, and you can get some pretty good sized fillets because of where we live. A lot of times we have easy access. People are usually gifting that kind of stuff to us, family, friends that fish. And anyway, a whole fillet, we can cook one of those up, and then it's like, we might eat on it one night, but there's a whole bunch of meat left. And so those, I like to use that, whether it be the salmon or the steelhead. Like people would use tuna and tuna noodle casserole. I'll do the same thing, but use the leftovers of that. I also have canned up a bunch of salmon, and I use that in the same thing. The other thing I'll use it for is making like a salmon or steelhead dip with some cream cheese and whatever spices I want to add into that, usually going to be onion and garlic. And you can make a really yummy dip out of that for chips or whatever you want to serve it with, or bread, or even make a sandwich spread like you would with tuna out of that. And then also I like to add it to fried rice. So the two leftover meats I like to use in a fried rice are chicken or salmon or steelhead. So I kind of, salmon and steelhead, I kind of count them as the same meats, even though they are a little different from each other. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about chicken. Chicken is one that I use in a lot of different things. So once I've baked up that chicken, we might eat on it for a night or two. And then I have two different types of pot pies I like to make with chicken, and that's just going to be your standard pot pie with a regular pie crust on the top and the bottom. Or I'll even make a chicken and biscuit pot pie. And that's kind of a fun one where you make your pot pie filling and then you top it off with your own homemade biscuit dough. I don't make it as dry when I do that, and so that way I can just kind of spoon it on top. And that's a pretty good, nice change if you want something a little different. And then I mentioned fried rice is one of my favorite things to do with leftover chicken. Another of my favorite things is to make chicken fettuccine, creamy chicken enchiladas. That's something I haven't made in a while, but I need to get back into that. So it's made very similar to the traditional enchiladas, except for you're using like a white sauce. You can make that from scratch yourself, and you're filling and the chicken and the cheese, and you're putting that inside of your tortillas, and then topping it off with some more sauce and cheese. Lots of cheese in enchiladas. Then I'll make a chicken salad for sandwiches. A couple more things is almond chicken. I actually prefer using leftover chicken when I make almond chicken or orange chicken, and I do have videos on that, and even a hot and sour soup. All these are kind of older videos, but they are out there, and I do love hot and sour soup on occasion. It is a nice change to a soup. So leftover chicken is something I'm going to use in that. And then with turkey, I don't do as many different things with turkey as I do with chicken, because I just don't like, I like turkey. I love turkey quite a bit. But for a lot of these kind of dishes that I listed, even though you could use turkey in any of these, I prefer it more for a turkey a la king. I like it better than chicken when it comes to that. So that's the most common thing I'll do with it. and then also turkey pot pie, and then of course soups, just like with any of those. And so again, where your food storage comes into play is the things like if you're freezing up your gravy, you're dehydrating things, or you're canning things, and anything you're putting up in your food storage can be combined with any of these. And here's another example. If you're one, like I have a lot of, in fact, I haven't stocked up on any in a long time because I have so much put up, but I have a lot of things like whole milk powder, heavy cream powder, cream cheese powder, and buttermilk powder, and any of those can be used to make, like I would use the heavy cream powder and the whole milk powder to make a white sauce out of. So let's say I want to do the meatballs and gravy, or I'm going to do the turkey a la king, or I'm going to make the chicken fettuccine, then I do this from time to time. I use the whole milk powder and the heavy cream powder. So those are things that are mostly just for food storage, for, you know, if we ever run out of milk, fresh milk or fresh cream, I've got those things I can fall back on. But every now and then I still work with them just to remind me that they're there and to stay practiced up, which is not hard. It's just a matter of mixing a little water with it, and then whatever else you're going to add to it. It's super easy. And by the way, to make any of those things real smooth, if you're trying just mixing cold water and you're just wanting to make milk to drink or serve on cereal, the best thing to do with those, especially the cream, is to put it in a blender with your water and then just blend it, and it's going to make it nice and smooth without any lumps. You can also use a stick blender and something like that. One more thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to touch on the ground beef. So ground beef is something else. Like, let's say you're cooking up some ground beef, or you thawed out a whole bunch of ground beef and to make some hamburger patties, and you thawed out a lot more than you needed. You can take that, brown it up, and then dehydrate it as is. Ground beef is the one thing that dehydrates and rehydrates really well without having to go through that extra step of freezing it after you've cooked it and then dehydrating it. And then I didn't bring any out. In fact, I thought that's what I was grabbing here, but I have a lot of dehydrated ground beef. So even if you're not going to use it right away in other dishes, then you can dehydrate that up and then have it ready for anything else. And dehydrated ground beef is really great for using in any kind of casserole, sauce, or soup. And I use a lot in making my homemade spaghetti sauce. And I'll put the dried ground beef in there, and I like it way better than the canned. I have a lot of canned ground beef, but the dried is so much better. So any kind of leftover ground meat, that's a great idea that you can do that with, because we actually still have a lot of ground venison and elk in our freezer as well. So I'm getting in the habit of just thawing out a bunch at a time and then either dehydrating it or finding other ways to use it up right away. So there's just a few ideas. I know many of my followers are going to have a lot more great ideas to add, so please put those in comments down below. And those who are looking for more ideas, don't forget to read the comments down below, and also to open the description box to find any links I'll be putting in there. Don't forget to click on either more or show more somewhere down here. You'll see it below the video screen. Just click on that. It'll open the description box to find all the links. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.